Well, my lock diff is starting to act like an open diff again. I believe that rear is starting to slip. It was broken before I JB welded it. I think that's the cause of it. So we're gonna go ahead and see how much it can take. Oh, there's some slippage. I noticed at first it wouldn't drift very good to the right. Just noticed that. But it'll drift really good to the left. It means that right wheel's hooking, that left rear is not. There's the issue I'm having right there. It's acting like it's open diff again. Fail. There's just no control anymore. Stupid open differential. Lost all control. Just drifts to the left now. It still works a little bit. She can't do it, Captain. Not too bad for a broken axle. Final burnout attempt. Oh, it's hooking up.
Go.
just wanted to start with a little backstory. The reason why I believe this thing is slipping is it previously broke about a week after I bought it. I was doing some drifts with it, and the rear axle basically was a dead axle. The one side started slipping, so I took it apart and I JB welded it, and it's been doing great so far. But I put in a much larger battery, and it's just couldn't handle it, I guess, and it re-broke on this side where it broke last time. And if you notice, I'm able to move this left wheel independently from that, and it does not turn the front wheels either. So that means that this side is broken off again, and I think it was only because it had broken previously. See, the gear on this side let go on the inside where the metal drive shaft meets. So I was trying to break the axle, but I ended up almost breaking my motor. And I went in last night, that was the footage that you were just watching, and it was went so long until the motor started making a smell, or I could smell it. As soon as I could smell the motor, I went ahead and cut it off. I did check it last night, and I just want to show it still works. Still works pretty well, which I'm surprised because I was definitely hammering on that axle. But I've had my metal gears now for a little while, and I just received my metal rear drive shaft, so I'm going to go ahead and install those parts now, because I don't believe in installing anything unless you really need it. So I wanted to go ahead and get my use out of these. And this thing still does well, and it only has one grub screw in that rear axle. And technically speaking, it's only one wheel drive on the right rear side right now, because of this left side just really isn't doing it. I just can't seem to break the thing. That rear axle or that rear drive shaft have been doing pretty good. I usually pay close attention to the engine heat, but I was so focused on destroying that rear axle that I completely forgot. Oh. I just can't seem to break it. But nonetheless, I guess I'm going to go ahead and put my upgrades on there. No use in just keeping them around for nothing. And that rear axle has let go now, so let's get to that. Alright, I went ahead and took this axle off. It only took 4 screws. I took the suspension links off, and then the arms for the rear suspension right here. Just 4 screws, that came right off. You can see it's one on each side, for one here, one here, one here, and then one here. And it slipped right out. And just take an Allen key and pop this drive shaft off. From Toy Outdoor Products through Amazon. Here it is out the box. You can see it's a perfect match for lengthwise. The old drive shaft was pretty hard to come off. I think they put some sort of epoxy in there. And the only reason I'm having to replace this is I lost a grub screw, so I was driving around with one grub screw on the drive axle side. There's my old axle with the new axle behind it. I just got to take the suspension mount off and transfer it on this. This axle is from a Kelly Wow truck. The only thing is this differential is spun around reverse in there. So if I just put it in there, it would actually drive in reverse with the rear drive shaft. So I just got to switch the inside pumpkin around, and it should work just fine. Alright, I've got my screws and my mounts swapped over, but I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. I'm going to go ahead and take this one apart and weld it with JB Weld right away. I know some people are saying, hey, why are you going to weld a brand new axle with metal gears and everything? But this is not a locked differential. It's still an open diff, which means it's only going to spin one tire. So I don't want that. I want it to spin both tires. And I don't want it to give up because it broke, because I didn't JB weld it right away. I'm going to JB weld it now, and it's going to be a ton stronger. This one wheel is still spinning, and it had all the weight of the whole truck on one wheel, and it was just still getting it. So it's obviously strong. It just gave up on this side where it's just broken previously, and it just couldn't hold on to make up the difference of that strip gear. And this one is Allen keys on the back of the housing, which I like a lot better. Well, there's the metal teeth. That's what it looks like apart. Got the axle there. The metal gear in there. You might notice that this is round on this one. That is round. And this old drive shaft is bladed. And it does fit. I even checked the old drive shaft that it's round. So it does fit on there perfectly fine. The new nuts that came with this are the same as the other one, so it's pretty much completely interchangeable. The only thing I've noticed is this thing only has 2 bearings, one on each side of the pumpkin, and it does not have a bearing down on this end. And the old original drive shaft did. It had dual bearings on both sides, so it was a little bit of a better setup as far as that goes, but obviously they were plastic, but this is metal. I'm going to take this apart and lock that up. Alright, this is what it looks like all apart. And this is what I was talking about previously, is that there's a bearing here, but see, these are not actually bearings, they're just races. There's a bearing on each side of the pumpkin, but there's these outside pieces, they're not bearings. So you can see these are not bearings, so obviously the other axle has a little bit more support, being that it has 4 bearings in there. Alright, what I did there was completely took that apart and degreased and then resealed the whole system with JB Weld. If you want to see how I did that, I have another video where I've already done it and explained the whole thing. So go to cheap diff lock or cheap RC diff lock on my videos, and you'll find it. And before I took this axle apart, I was discussing about flipping the axle pumpkin. This is what I wanted to show you. See this gear? If you were to take this out and flip it onto the other side, it would actually spin this in reverse, because you would hit the other side of that tooth in there. See, when that tooth gets spun from the front from the drive shaft coming from the front, it gets spun, and if you're looking at it now, it gets spun counterclockwise. So the left side would be going down, the right side would be going up. So if you put it on the left side, it pushes down and would be rolling the axle forward. If it's coming up, it would be rolling the axle backwards, and it would therefore put this in reverse as you're trying to go forward. And you need to cut this little tab out right here that I'm poking at. It stops the gear from being able to flip from that side to this side. And it doesn't make a difference. It's equal distance between the bearings, the same way, either way. Putting it back together now. I'm going to go ahead and prep my drive shaft and get the first half in. Alright, I'm all back together, and because my rims are plastic right here on the inside, I went ahead and used the plastic hex nut for the back of the rim, simply because I think that metal might do a little bit of damage, being a little bit harsh on the plastic to metal. This is what my drive shaft looks like in there. Alright, I'm all back together. My main concern was that maybe this rear axle would be a different gear ratio, and I was a little bit worried about that, but as you can see, it rolls very evenly. There's no resistance. Both front and rear are equal. It's not fighting me. You would see one of the either front or rear would try to spin at a different ratio, and there would be some bind up. But there's no bind up. It's real smooth. Even though that gear, the axle has a different gear back here, but it makes up for the difference with a smaller tooth inside the front where the drive shaft connects. But it's the same gear ratio. It's from a Kelly Wow 1/12. I believe it's called a thruster or something like that. But either way, There you go. I'm gonna let that JB Weld set up in there and lock up that rear diff. It's already pretty much tightened up. And there you go. Got some rear upgrades, axle upgrades. The rear axle looks the same because it's plastic housing, but there you go. So there you have it. Yep, got a metal axle, metal drive shaft. Can't wait to take that thing out and bash it some more. Well, that's gonna be it.